You've probably already heard of fake news, a new popular term describing how news outlets put political spin on news stories or completely fabricate them in an attempt to control the opinions of their audience. Many countries propagate fake news with strong controls over their news outlets by passing off corrupted broadcasting as bias free. There is one news outlet under government control in Canada, the CBC. So let's review their work and make our own decisions as to whether they are a free media or if they are a propaganda wing of our government. On the CBC website, where Canadians ask why the CBC is so biased, the following answer was given. It is the duty of CBC News to inform its viewers across the country what is happening without bias or prejudice. 94% of those with that question about the CBC did not buy their response and found the CBC statement unhelpful. Let's see if you are in the 94% or the 6% that do seem to trust the CBC. Let's start with the coverage of the federal election of 2015. I'll compare the coverage of former Prime Minister Stephen Harper with the challenging Liberal leader Justin Trudeau, and you can decide if it's fair. Without getting into the specifics of each article, here's some of the top submissions from CBC about each leader leading up to the election. The links will be in the description for you to take a closer look yourself and get an even more detailed understanding of the underlying political spin. Article 1. Harper forced to defend record on economy, security. Article 2. Harper has brought in a number of laws, some of which have been overturned by the courts. Justin Trudeau and Thomas Mulcair love middle-class Canadians. Article 3. Trudeau shows love for Montreal Canadiens, joking around with fans. Article 4. The Harper government has been accused of using departmental ad budgets and civil service resources to deliver partisan messages. Article 5. Picture of Trudeau celebrating with supporters with a sub-headline that starts, Conservative Scandals. Article 6. With friends like Stephen Harper, the Alberta economy doesn't need enemies. CBC also interviewed all federal candidates. Keep in mind that the slogan throughout Justin Trudeau's campaign was real change. So Peter Mansbridge decided to start with that.
Well, a lot of Canadians, the survey says 70%, suggest they want change. So if you're lucky enough to be Prime Minister after October 19th, what immediate change will they see from you?
He started similarly with Stephen Harper.
Most Canadians say, at least according to the polls, that they want change in this election. You're the one who's campaigning on no change. I've got the right way, stay the course. How do you campaign in that kind of an atmosphere?
Well, I encourage you to dig deeper and read through the articles yourself. Do you think that either of the candidates was shown in a better light in an attempt to brainwash Canadians, or do you think that your tax dollars went towards informing you in an unbiased manner? Let's look at what both parties had to say about the CBC and their platform. Stephen Harper's Conservatives, in an attempt to reduce taxes on Canadians, figured that the CBC should have a less lavish budget. In fact, $115 million was cut over 3 years, and more cuts were on the horizon. Trudeau, on the other hand, took the exact opposite approach and pledged to increase taxes and massively increase funding to the Crown Corporation if he got elected. Funding is now well over $1 billion. The CBC had to decide whether to favor the party that would cost them their livelihood or the party that would grant them millions of Canadian taxpayer dollars in bonuses. What side do you think they would take in such a system? We actually don't have to guess what side the CBC journalists are on. Their union, the Canadian Media Guild, actually registered to officially campaign for the Liberal Party of Canada. This information is available to anyone. Just look up registered third parties on the Elections Canada website. It's all there. Maybe these sample stories and pledges of allegiance to the Liberals don't convince you that our tax dollars are going towards brainwashing Canadians for Liberal elites. Maybe you're on the politically left-wing side of the spectrum and you're happy that a certain narrative was propagated at election time, or you think that this type of thing would only happen in North Korea. Well, let's look at some of the narratives since the election to see if the CBC is currently a propaganda tool or if it is actually real news. The most highly contested story since the election has been refugees coming to Canada.
And we are accelerating the process to let these refugees in as quickly as we possibly can.
Although numerous polls have shown that the majority of Canadians do not support Justin Trudeau's refugee plan, you would have no idea of that fact, and the majority of Canadians would feel out of touch with their countrymen when they got their news from the CBC. There are many CBC puff pieces that tell Canadians that Canadians all welcome the mass Middle Eastern migration to our country. The CBC even mentioned that 95% of Canadians are clamoring to help. One particular story that showed how happy Calgarians were to welcome Syrian refugees was shown as CBC filmed a nice welcoming party and introduced the hosts just as regular Canadians. The CBC conveniently left out the fact that those normal Calgarians shown were actually Liberal Party agents in disguise. Look it up for yourself. Their names are Cesar Agudelo and Esmahan Razavi.
Cesar Agudelo and his friends came up with the idea.
We invited people where Esmahan, who speaks Arabic, will be doing the welcoming.
Razavi's official job for the Liberal Party was to get Muslim voters to keep the Liberals in power. As only about 2% of Muslims in Canada voted for the Conservatives in 2015, it appears the best strategy for Esmahan was to get Canadian citizenship for as many foreign Muslims as possible.
I have worked on campaigns as a volunteer.
So you know.
If you look for the story about the Jewish student harassed in school or the 14-year-old girl who was molested by multiple Syrian refugees at a dance out east, you won't find a single article on the CBC. The other and more widely covered story about the 6 Canadian girls who recently got molested by a Syrian refugee out west in Edmonton was in fact covered by the CBC. The article focused on how it was shameful. Sorry. Let me clarify. When the CBC reported it was shameful, they were referring to the fact that the story got out, not the actual molestation of our young Canadian girls. Various hate-related incidents have been in the media lately. A mosque, for example, in Toronto was protested by anti-Islamic protesters, an action strongly condemned by the CBC and Mayor John Tory. Tory stated that he visited the Masjid Mosque in Toronto many times. The CBC alluded that the protest may be a hate crime, implying people should be charged and rounded up for what they called Islamophobia. Neither John Tory, who attends the mosque regularly, nor the articles in question by the CBC commented on the sermons recited within the mosque's walls.
وأذل الشرك والكفرة والملحدين وانصر عبادك الموحدين اللهم انصر إخواننا المسلمين المستضعفين وانزل الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والكفرة والملحدين وانصر عبادك الموحدين اللهم انصر إخواننا المسلمين المستضعفين والمظلومين والمجاهدين في كل مكان اللهم أفرغ عليهم صبرا وثبت أقدامهم وانصرهم على القوم الكافرين.
It's not clear if Mayor John Tory was there when the congregation asked Allah to purify the filth of the Jews. With this new increased hate emerging in the Liberal Party's Canada, new motions have entered Parliament with glowing reviews from the CBC. Rather than focus on the anti-Semitic hate crimes, which are 10 times more likely than anti-Muslim ones, the motion actually targeted neither. The most popular motion, M103, targeted Islamophobia, which is linked to the criticism of codified Islam itself as a political force, more so than protecting any actual Canadian people. The Pakistani-born Liberal MP introduced this motion as a path towards creating future laws, but even many Conservatives supported it, despite massive resistance from the Canadian people. The whole-of-government approach in Pakistan to eliminate Islamophobia gives critics of Islam fines or the death penalty depending on the severity of their speech. The motion in the Canadian Parliament does not mention any specific actions, but does also suggest a whole-of-government approach to eliminate Islamophobia. Quibbling over semantics is specifically what the CBC wrote in yet another puff piece praising the Liberal bravery and their fight for Islamic ideals against Islamophobia. It is clear to me that the leadership in Canada is not working in the best interest of our country and is merely taking actions to secure the elite's power over the people. I personally think decisions on how Canada should proceed should be made to benefit Canadians. That's why I support the National Advancement Party of Canada and their policy to stop forcing taxpayers to fund the CBC. The NA Party, first and foremost, pledges its allegiance to our people and not the media elite, not potentially dangerous foreigners, and definitely not any religious ideology. If you are someone who is actually proud to be Canadian and is willing to help us steer our country back into our people's hands, please at least hear us out and let us make our case on Facebook at the National Advancement Party of Canada. Give us a like and see what we are all about. Thanks for watching.